Senator Elizabeth Warren is so evil. She might be the most radically pro-abortion person in our entire government right now. She's actually targeting crisis pregnancy centers, the place where all the things that the left is constantly telling us that in order to be pro-life, you can't just protect unborn children. You also have to support mothers, and you have to support children outside the womb, and you have to support fathers, and you have to, they're basically telling us that we have to support this gargantuan welfare state, which isn't true. But all of the things that the left tells us that we ought to do to support women in crisis pregnancies, we do with crisis pregnancy centers. And yet, Senator Elizabeth Warren is targeting crisis pregnancy centers. This is what she tweeted. She said, in Massachusetts, so-called crisis pregnancy centers outnumber legitimate abortion care providers 3-1. We need to crack down on the deceptive practices these centers use to prevent people from getting abortion care, and I've got a bill to do just that. How creepy is that? How absolutely creepy is that? This is what her bill does. By the way, Elizabeth Warren is like the biggest proponent of the administrative state, the biggest proponent of the swamp, of using the power of executive agencies who are filled with bureaucrats who are not accountable to voters to do her dirty work, because she knows it'll never pass through Congress. This bill is a perfect example of that. It essentially empowers the Federal Trade Commission, of all places, the FTC, to issue rules. Issue rules. Classic administrative state. To, quote unquote, prohibit deceptive or misleading advertising related to the provision of abortion services. The FTC is also allowed to enforce these rules, and they are allowed to monetarily penalize organizations that violate the rules that they make up. So they are both the judge, the jury, and the executioner. Lovely, really lovely, Senator Warren. So Senator Warren has some co-sponsors on this bill, one of whom is Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney. And this is what she says. This is where it gets really creepy. She says, no one should have to question that the person they are seeking medical advice from is actually a doctor, or that information is accurate, objective, and complete. Let me just interrupt Congresswoman Maloney for a second. It was the left who advocated for not doctors to be able to actually inflict abortions on women. They wanted nurse practitioners and PAs to be able to facilitate abortions. But now, suddenly, when it's on the flip side here, when we have pro-life crisis pregnancy centers staffed with not just medical professionals, but also not just doctors, I should say, but other medical professionals or well-meaning counselors or pro-lifers who are there to help women with their time and their money and their love, suddenly only doctors should be able to talk about abortion. Funny how that works. Maloney goes on to say, it is truly disgusting that reproductive rights are being threatened and attacked by crisis pregnancy centers whose guiding principle is to mislead, misinform, and outright lie to pregnant people in order to dissuade them from having an abortion. LOL. In the same sentence that she uses the word pregnant people, she talks about out and out lying. Okay, what is a pregnant person, Congressman Maloney? Tell me exactly what a pregnant person is. She said, it is long past time that we prohibit these predatory tactics to undermine reproductive rights. This legislation cracks down on disinformation by simply requiring the FTC to ensure honesty for those that advertise reproductive health care. So that sentence is the sentence that just gives me the creepies, the heebie-jeebies. That cracks down on disinformation by simply requiring the FTC to ensure honesty for those that advertise reproductive health care. Do you know what this means? This means that if this bill becomes law, crisis pregnancy centers across the country would not be able to actually say what they do. They would not be able to actually speak the truth. They wouldn't be able to say, life begins at conception. A human life begins the moment a sperm and an egg fuse and form a unique DNA. This is a person. This is a baby. There's no other time during a pregnancy that an embryo or a fetus goes from not being a baby to being a baby. The only moment that could happen is the moment of conception. And abortion is a gruesome, brutal procedure that ends that life and will harm you as the woman too. That you'll feel regret. That studies show you'll have more depression and anxiety. You'll perhaps be more likely to commit suicide. You will harm your fertility. There's a correlation between cancer and heart disease and abortion. Crisis pregnancy centers won't be allowed to say any of that if Elizabeth Warren gets her way, because this bill is intended to crack down on so-called disinformation. We know the definition of disinformation when it comes from the left. It's anything that the left doesn't want you to hear. This bill is terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. This is from Warren's press release. She says crisis pregnancy centers routinely use a variety of deceptive tactics, including making false claims about reproductive health care and disseminating inaccurate, misleading, and stigmatizing information about abortion and contraception. Additionally, most crisis pregnancy centers in the United States do not employ licensed medical personnel or provide referrals for birth control or abortion care. So what does this mean? That she wants the FTC to fine crisis pregnancy centers if the FTC, under the liberal administration that we have right now, thinks that being pro-life stigmatizes abortion. If you don't celebrate abortion, you should be fined by the FTC. If you don't refer for abortion, you should be fined by the FTC. This is really scary stuff. But this is what the left is doing. They say, if you have an ectopic pregnancy, a miscarriage, you won't be able to find treatment because it's prohibited under these pro-life laws. That's false. They say women will die. You're being misled. That's absolutely false. The people who are misleading women right now are the left.